Hello there, YouTube. Broggy the Scald here. And, well, I'm gonna wing this like I normally do, but I at least have some material here with me. I had not charged my Kindle Fire HD in a while, and I decided to do that. I have a digital subscription to Game Informer, the magazine that GameStop provides and all that other fun stuff with their rewards program. And I came across an article in the table of contents that I immediately flipped to because I was really appalled by this. But the article is basically an interview with one Anita Sarkeesian. Fairly soon, I'm actually going to be doing a paper on her for my English class because I did one for my another one for my English class on Gamergate and all that other fun stuff. By the way, for those who are interested, I am pro Gamergate. I think that it is a wonderful movement. I want to shout out to everyone who's fighting a good fight. Anyway, but let's see. Basically, this interview was done by a Matt Helgeson. I will be doing follow-up research on who the heck this Matt Helgeson guy is. And let's see. Let's first go over the questions that are put to Miss Sarkeesian. The first question is, how did you come up with the idea for tropes versus women in games? And she answers very wordy. It looks like here. I skimmed through most of them, but let's see. There was a series I did called Tropes versus Women in 2011. It was primarily TV and movies. Then the next year, I decided to do Tropes versus Women in video games. I wanted to do one specific about video games because there were more tropes I wanted to cover. I've always liked games. Now, I don't have the footage here with me, but if you look at certain other people critical of Miss Sarkeesian, it's fairly apparent that this is a blatant lie. There is footage of her saying that she doesn't like video games, and she has had to do a lot of research on video games because she doesn't like cutting people's heads off or blowing people's heads off or something because, to quote, it's just gross. I mean, first off, straight out the gate, and the thing is I don't know whether or not she's always liked games or she doesn't like games, but these two statements are diametrically opposed. Therefore, one of those statements is a lie. So she has already established herself as a very untrustworthy person. I do not like being lied to, and I know a lot of people out there don't like being lied to. Miss Sarkeesian, if you are out there, if you are in the public face, do not let them catch you in a lie. Ever. Because that is why people dislike you. Okay. She says, I've always liked video games. I had a contentious relationship with them. I played a lot of games as a kid. As I got older, I sort of was in and out of liking gaming because I felt it was really hostile terrain for women. Okay. Let's address this. How is video gaming hostile terrain for women? I believe Sargon of Akkad, when he was talking about his like for one of the reasons why Gamergate was so important to him was he claimed it, and I agree with him. It was a true meritocracy, basically saying that you had to have skills to get it. The reason why there are video games out there that may or may not have sexist tropes, I'm sure there are, but the thing is that art imitates life, and I will argue at this point vehemently. Life does not imitate art for several reasons. I mean, it's what we know. And a lot of times we're making commentary on the ills of society, which is why I think these tropes are necessary, because they are addressing some inherent problems in society. But what Miss Sarkeesian is doing is she's blaming the art form, not society. And that therein lies a problem, because there are reasons for these things. There are reasons why people do what they do. Moving on, next question. Talk about some of the games you've mentioned, whether it's Call of Duty or God of War. Both games, I believe, were actually featured in... well, no, I don't think Call of Duty was featured in any of her diatribes about tropes versus women in video games. But God of War, yes, it has been mentioned due to the sex minigame. But okay, whether it's Call of Duty or God of War, have you found enjoyment in those games, or do you find them alienating? Another thing, these questions seem to be rather loaded. I mean, and she says it depends on the game. There are games that I play because it's my job to play them, because I'm getting footage. Once again, Miss Sarkeesian, you are a liar. Because there has been countless people say that you just took Let's Play footage, ripped them from the YouTube videos without citing your sources. Which, by the way, not citing your sources is the pinnacle of academic dishonesty. Okay? So that therein lies a problem I have with your answer. And the fact that this is in a magazine, or an e-magazine for that matter, in my case, irritates the living crap out of me. Now, just so you know, I got the subscription before the whole Gamergate thing came out. I think I got it last year and everything, but it's just... And the problem I have with this is this seems a very, very biased thing. Oh, and by the way, if you're familiar with that layout for Game Informer, they have that little sidebar thing, career highlights. 1989, birth of a gamer. Sarkeesian falls in love with video games, particularly Nintendo series like Kirby and Mario Brothers. All the way down to 2014 harassment. Well, that seems kind of wrong as well, considering that she claimed harassment in 2013, not 2014, and that harassment was only to gain support for her Kickstarter campaign. Oh boy, I'm. Oh, this is getting really, really irritating. Let's see. Okay, I'm now getting the parts where I haven't read. And by the way, I'm only stopping when I get really, really pissed off. Just so you know. When it comes to gender or race portrayals in media, do you think that creators have a responsibility to challenge the status quo? Or are you just looking for creators to look at their own preconceptions? Well, both. Wait a second. Okay, I gotta reread that one. When it comes to... One of the quotes that I like to come back to is by Bell Hooks. She says that something to the effect that popular culture, for better or worse, is currently where the learning is happening. Okay, I can sort of agree to that. This means that TV shows, movies, books, video games are helping shape our collective cultural universe. Well, here's where you lose me. Because movies, books, TV shows are also in this category of shaping, and you're focusing on video games. Now, you could say that video games are a more interactive medium, and therefore you learn more from them. Not necessarily. I sit there when I play video games myself, and I just let the story wash over me, just like I'm sitting there watching a movie or something like that. That's what video games have turned into today. I let the story wash over me. I don't. I can choose to like or dislike a character based on what has been presented for me. I mean, if a character is truly misogynistic, I will probably dislike him or her, depending on the character. If the character is truly a good person, hey, I'll choose to like them. But the thing is that what you're asking us to do is basically eliminate sexist tropes when they're really just a commentary on how society is. And the second we ignore that there are people out there like that, the second that you give them the power to do whatever the hell they want in society. There are bad people out there. There are people out there right now in this world who want to kill us all because we're American and we do not agree with their belief system. I think that's messed up. I actually think worrying about that is a more constructive use of our time than this. But the reason why I am engaging in the exercise of refuting all of this is because video gaming is something near and dear to my heart. I'm former Navy, and can you guess what we would do in our spare time other than drinking and being loud, obnoxious assholes? We'd play video games. And it's just one of those things. It just irritates me when someone like you, Miss Sarkeesian, who basically is looking for a way to breeze through life. This is what you're doing because you're not being subtle about it in any way, shape, or form. People have found footage of you going to a seminar telling you how to make money by making seminars. And this is what you're doing. You're inciting rage and harassment, and people are flocking to you. And it's, quite frankly, it's irritating. And yes, Ms. Sarkeesian, I do watch your videos, and for a brief moment, I was taken in. And then I heard the other side of the argument. This is something I like to do. Whenever I hear an argument for something, I like to hear the other side as well, because that is only when you can make a true opinion on anything. All right. Losing focus here. All right. Moving on. Next question. What has been the reception to your work within the industry among people who actually make games? Okay, I actually gotta hear this. I have visited some game studios and talked in workshops with them about women's representation in games. It's interesting because the industry has been very receptive for the most part. When I started the series, I didn't really consider the developers' part as my audience, but I didn't really think about it. As the attention to my project got bigger, I realized the developers are actually watching this stuff and they're interested and engaged. They bring it back into their studios and they have conversations around their representation. Sometimes there are debates like, hey, let's not do that. That's awesome because part of what the series is hopefully doing is inspiring these conversations. It's inspiring people to talk about, to start recognizing this stuff and make smarter, more intentional decisions about what goes into their games. Some developers whose games I have criticized have actually come out publicly and say, yeah, we did that. That was not a good idea. I'm not going to do that again in the future. I think it's really encouraging. Okay. For the most part, I kind of agree with this attestation. This is what your project is doing. It is causing public discourse. But for what the video game developers are saying, I'm going to need a citation. You were really bad about this, Miss Sarkeesian. I want to say that there is no market for what you would consider a perfectly non-sexist video game in the regular game, the AAA game group, like with big name developers for consoles, PC, and all that other fun stuff. There's no market for it. I mean, if you're afraid of being playing a game that's incredibly sexist and all that other fun stuff, stick to Candy Crush. It's not sexist. It's not anything. It doesn't make any important commentary on social issues. But anyway, so moving on. Did you have any ideas what you were doing with these videos was going to be as controversial as it's proven to be? No, not in the slightest. I'm going to call bullshit on that. I'm pretty sure you knew exactly what you were doing, right down to the part where you allowed comments on the video where you announced the Kickstarter. Because you knew, as everyone who ever spends any amount of time in the vlogosphere, blogosphere, whatever the hell you want to call it, you knew that there were going to be trolls. And the trolls were your way into public discourse and your way into the heartstrings of people who don't understand that you don't feed the trolls. Ignore them. That's the only thing to do with trolls. Now, granted, I have not had any discourse with trolls myself, but if I did, I'm pretty sure I would ignore the shit out of them. Let's see. Yeah, and that whole question, she's talking about the whole but the level of vitriol I received because of this Kickstarter project was unlike anything I've ever experienced. You knew what was going to happen, Miss Sarkeesian. You knew it, and you used it to your advantage. I'm sorry, but when the Kickstarter goal was surpassed substantially from $6,000 to about $160,000, you knew something was going to happen. You knew how to work the crowd. You played to the crowd, and you won. And am I a little bit jealous? Yes, I'm jealous that I didn't think of that shit before you did. But I mean, now you have this whole persona. I don't even know if that's you. I really don't, because it's now become a persona, and I'm not a big fan of that persona that you have created for yourself, because you are now a public figure of public discourse. I believe you're working on Mirror's Edge 2 because game developers wanted to make it seem not as sexist or whatever. I don't know. Okay, next question. Do you ever consider deciding that it's not worth it? And she said, I'd be lying if I said no. Being attacked or terrorized for over 2 years, you are really playing to the crowd. You got that pathos violin right next to you. playing the sad, sad song of someone who is being harassed on the internet. I'm sorry, I have very little sympathy. You knew something could happen when you became a public figure. Putting yourself in the limelight like that will attract attention. It's anyway, but I'll get these emails from people like a mother and daughter from about media and literature. You said this stuff. If this stuff is in schools, I'm gonna eat my lunch. I really am, because none of your videos, Miss Sarkeesian, are of academic quality. The studies that you cite in your blog and not on the YouTube video themselves, which is something that you should really look into, are of limited sample size. For something this important, if you're going to do a study on it, you're going to have a massive sample size, because correlation is not, I repeat, not causation. So, yeah, that's none of the findings in the studies that were cited fly. Let's see. Those critical of your work argue that pressuring developers to re-examine their portrayals of female characters amounts to a form of censorship, which I agree with. That developers have the responsibility to make the best games possible. How do you respond to that? The argument, of course, is of censorship is total nonsense. The work that I'm doing advocates critical thinking. No, you are actually advocating censorship. I'm sorry. Censorship is basically cutting something out that you don't like from a free speech type platform. Which, the messages that you're trying to convey in video games is an element of free speech. I don't care what way you spin it. Any element of any form of the media I'm talking about movies, news, TV shows, books, whatever. We have a right to say what we want. And I may not agree with what one video game or what one movie or what one public person has to say, but you know what? I will fight to the death for their right to say it. I really don't know who said that, but I love that quote, and it's wonderful. Anyway, anyone who says that it is censorship needs to look up what the word censorship means. Really? Really? Do you define censorship in this? No definition. No definition. If you were going to present that, if you want to argue that point, it is up to you to define censorship, which you failed to do. Okay. Last question. Looking to the future of these issues, what are some things that you hope will change in the next 20 years in video games? Oh, this is going to be fun. I think a good starting point would be an end to this flippant, casual use of sexism so prevalent in the industry. I want to see more diverse and inclusive stories. Miss Sarkeesian, do you know what game I was just playing not an hour ago? I was playing the latest Tomb Raider game. That game is all about female empowerment. Miss Croft is thrust into a situation in which, under normal circumstances, according to you, a man would have to help. But no. She, through her own force of will, basically survives a harrowing ordeal, which does force her to kill for the first time in her life. I'm talking about the character. And and I actually applaud how the game handled that particular moment, because personally, I have never killed anyone, but I can imagine that it is a wrenching experience. And it was actually quite nice to see a video game of all things where you kill like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people through the course of one game. And it's like, okay. But here's the thing. I can name countless female characters that are very well represented in the industry. And quite a few of them are in very recent games. And one of my favorite female characters of all time in any video game that I have ever played, Elizabeth Comstock from BioShock Infinite. She is possibly one of the reasons why she was my favorite character, was she could take care of herself, and she did. In fact, in the DLC, you play as her, and you know what? She's not one to be messed with. Not by a long shot. But she says, Miss Sarkeesian says, I want to see more diverse and inclusive stories. That means including a wide range of women's stories and stories of other marginalized communities. That means having more female characters that are good, bad, and everything in between. Okay, which is a contradiction to everything you've ever said about every video game ever. Women can't be portrayed as bad, and everything in between. There are very, very strong female characters. One of my favorite video game series of all time, Mass Effect. Mass Effect has a broad spectrum of very interesting female characters. Hell, one of the species in the game is entirely female. It's just no. Okay, I've rambled on and on about this long enough, and I'm sure none of you have actually listened to this far. But my point is that this is in a fucking magazine here. And I'm really irritated that it's in the magazine, because, I absolutely detest what you stand for, Miss Sarkeesian. I do think that it's censorship, and I think you should look what censorship is all about, because every single one of your videos is talking about basically taking the freedom out of developing narratives. I've tried writing stories before, and whenever you're it's just, sorry about that. That's a hazard for where I live. Anyway, but whenever you're trying to develop a narrative and you have restrictions on that, it makes it that much more difficult to make a good story. So, yeah. This is Braga the Scald signing off. This is probably my longest video to date. Subscribe if you like what I had to say. And like, comment. By the way, hashtag Gamergate, hashtag Not Your Shield. Although I don't fall under the demographic of that, I am very much in support of what they have to say. And I very much am opposed to Miss Sarkeesian. All right. Well, this is Burger Skull signing out.